What's up guys, welcome to another BlueHorizonGaming video. I'm here with Boyle and myself. We are playing DCS. This is the P-51D Mustang. This is basically going to be a very quick and easy tutorial, very straightforward. We're not going to overburden you or really confuse you with
make you sit through an hour-long video or something.
Yeah, and we're not going to make you sit for a very long video, and we're not going to use every sort of, you know, very complicated terminology of the aircraft that you'll sit there and you go, oh, what's a primer, or what's this, what's that. You know, we're not going to try and confuse you with anything. So it's going to be very straightforward, button to button. We're going to show you how to taxi properly, take off and whatnot. Before I start, I'm going to tell you some buttons that you pretty much must have mapped. If you have a joystick, map them on your joystick. If you don't, make sure you know what they are. Go to the controls before you get in the aircraft and look at these controls and know what they are on the keyboard or controller, whatever you're using. I recommend the joystick. If you don't have one, it's not the end of the world, but it's going to be pretty much impossible with this aircraft to take off without a joystick. But you know, you can give it a go. A lot of people have done it. It's not impossible, so whatever. Right, so buttons I think you should map. I'll show you my control surfaces throughout the entire video so you know what I'm doing with the joystick, the rudder, the brakes and the throttle the entire time, so you can follow my actions if need be. Now the buttons that you have to have mapped are the wheel brakes left and right. These are literally so important due to the fact that you will not be able to taxi the aircraft from the runway unless you have them mapped. Now, I'm not sure what the mapping on the keyboard is for these buttons, but it's not hard to find. They'll be called wheel brake left, wheel brake right, something along those lines. I believe it would be wheel brake left, wheel brake right. In fact, I'm almost 100%. I have them mapped to my joystick, and when they're mapped, you'll know the left one, as you can see on the bottom left of the screen now, this is the left brake. So as you can see, it's moving up and down. That's for the left wheel, so you can taxi left. And this is the right brake, so you can taxi right. I'm using my joystick buttons, as I said, that are mapped, so I can't tell you what the keys are. Something you have to find out, not difficult to find out. Wheel brake, they'll be in the menu. P-51D sim. Right, so the reason that you have to have these mapped is because the rudder is not powerful enough at low speeds to taxi you around the runway. Yes, you have a rudder, but it won't work to the same extent that it would in like an A10, and you got to think about, in an A10 you have nose wheel steering. In this you don't. You have to use the wheel brakes to taxi. That's why it's so difficult, and that's why you have to have them mapped, as they are, you need them to fly or take off at least. The next button I would say you have mapped. What would you recommend, Bob? Is there any button you think they definitely have to have mapped? I would say leaning, because I want to just show you something. The fuel gauges are found here under the seats. And to see them, you have to move left and right with the buttons. Again, I have them mapped, but I know what they are. If you want to lean from one side to the other, you have to hold down right control, right shift, and then use the numpad number 6 to move right, number 4 to move left, 5 is to center, and then you can press 8 to move up so you can see above the nose, and you can press 2 to go down for some, if you want to see, you know, the dials a bit closer, and then you can press, and that's it. They're the controls. To zoom out, on the numpad, the star and the division key, the slash key, the forward slash, they are what will zoom you in and out on above the numpad. Again, I have it mapped, but they are the buttons. But they'll already be done for you on the keyboard. All that will already be done for you on the keyboard. But I recommend if you have a joystick, map the buttons that move you from left to right, because you have to, and the recenter button, just because you have to be able to see the fuel while flying, and holding down left control, left shift takes one hand, the numpad takes the other hand up. Being able to then zoom in and look at it takes another hand. I mean, you only have 2 hands. You won't be able to fly the aircraft whilst doing so. It would be literally impossible without the buttons mapped. So, knowing that they're the buttons you have to map, let's get onto the tutorial. Boyle, do you want to start us off with the tutorial?
Yeah, right. If you want to start off on the left side of the aircraft, make it simple. The rear left, the big yellow lever is your flaps. To start off, we're going to raise these. Just in front of that, you've got carburetor air. You want to shove that forwards. And then just after that, by these big dials, you have 2 switches. They should automatically be set to automatic, but you want to check that just before. Make sure that they're not going to screw you over. That you've got the throttle. Back to that in a minute. Now moving over to the right side of the aircraft, you've got
the rudder trim for takeoff.
We'll do that once you've got the engine started.
Oh, I guess you can. Continue.
Right. Right, on the right side of the aircraft, you've got a lot of looking switches. You want to turn on the battery disconnect and the generator switch. And that should start providing electrical power to the aircraft. Or your lights will come on, it'll make a little noise. And, right, back to the left side. There's 3 little dials after trimming your aircraft. Fiddling with to make it fly straight. What you want to do is trim the rudder to roughly 5 degrees right. And depending on the fuel, you'll want to change the elevator. It's another story. Right, now we're going to start the engine start procedure. If you want to take over from here.
Thank you very much, Paul. It was very good indeed. Righto, so from this point forward, the first thing you want to do is go ahead and switch on the fuel shutoff valve. Boosh. That'll be this big red lever right here. Once that's on, your fuel shutoff valve is no longer activated. Or is it activated, sorry. So now once that's on, you want to move over to these switches on the bottom left hand side of your center console. You will have these switches here as I'm showing you now. The 2 flick switches and the 3 normal ones without the covers. Now what the first thing you want to do is turn on the fuel booster, which is this furthest to the left. It's called fuel booster, as you can see. And you go ahead and you click it. Now that means fuel is now going to aircraft. As you can see, we have got fuel going to the engine, sorry, not the aircraft. And that means that, you know, we're in a good position to continue the takeoff sequence now. If that does not move, this dial here, as I'll show you, which shows you your fuel, if this doesn't move, that's registering your fuels to the reaching the engine and whatnot, the oil, you have done something wrong. But as long as you follow this procedure, as we have said as we've gone along, you should not have a single issue. Now what you want to do is arm both your ignition to both. Sorry, so you want to move it from off. You can either right click once, or you can left click 1 time, 2 time, 3 time, and you're on both. You see it move to the word both. Right, once that's done, you're nearly ready to go. What you have to do is you have to arm your primer for 4 seconds in cold temperatures, but I would say for good measure always do it for 4 seconds, as there's no harm done in doing it for the 4 seconds even in a warm temperature. So hold it, 1, 2, 3 and 4. That's done. And then you want to move over to this side on the left, underneath the throttle. If you move the throttle forward, you'll be able to see the propeller RPM, which is the big black P. You want to push that all the way forward to the absolute furthest it will go up for takeoff. So the propeller RPM, you want to drag it forward all the way to as far as it will go. You can now drag the throttle back all the way forward. So now P is as far forward as it will go. That is the propeller RPM. Leave the mixture alone until the engine starts. Now, we're going to go through the startup sequence. I'm just going to show you the switch to arm your weapons, even though I wouldn't do it on the ground, but the button is right here. These are how you arm your weapons. You just right click once and you'll have a reticule come up, like so, and you can go ahead and change that with the gun sight reticule changing button, which is to the left hand side of the cockpit, just above this lever here, and this sort of poorly textured what looks like a compass from what I can see, to be honest. So just next to that is this button here, the gun sight. It's quite hard to see, you have to really look for it, but you click it once, you'll have a different reticule come up, which is the fix sight, and you click it again and you'll be left with just this sight here, which is the gyro sight, and then you click one more time and it'll go back to standard, which is the fixed sight on its own. So this is the fixed, that's gyro and fixed, and that's just the gyro. I prefer the fixed on its own, but it's all down to personal preference what you prefer, so have a muck around with those during combat. I'm now going to unarm my weapons by right clicking once, as I don't need to have them armed, but that was just to show you the way to arm your weapons if you were wondering. Now, I'm going to go ahead and close the canopy for the sake of the video, as it's going to be extremely loud when the engine starts. Even though I do like to start with the engine open normally, for you guys' sake, I'm going to close it. Now to start the engine. When the engine starts, which we are going to do by pressing the home key, or you can flick up this flick switch. As you can see, you can flick this switch up or flick it back down, or if you press the home key once, which is the engine start button, it will flick up, and then you have to hold it down to start the engine the second time. Now, why I haven't started it quite yet is because you have to know what to do once the engine starts spinning. Otherwise, the engine can blow out, and you have to wait 5 minutes for a cooldown till you can try it again. And you may even have to refuel the aircraft, as in you have to turn off all the shut-off valves and turn them all back on and go through the startup sequence again. So it is a pain in the arse. So here is the mixture button, which changes the mixture to off, run, or emergency full rich. Now, what you want to do is once the engine is starting to spin, and you'll hear the distinct sound of the fuel reaching the engine and the prop spinning, you're going to left click once the mixture control button to turn it into run. To do this, you're going to want to hold down the home key to start the engine rather than clicking the actual button in Cockpit, unless you have this button mapped, obviously, due to the fact that you can't click this button and hold it whilst clicking this button. It is impossible. So I'm going to go ahead, press home once to flick up the flick switch. That's up. And I'm going to do it one more time, and I'm going to hold it down this time, and you're going to see the prop spin from left to right. And what you're going to see is you're going to see it go very slowly, and then you're going to see it catch, and it's going to start going fast. And the second you hear that catch and you see it spinning, you're going to left click the mixture once to add mixture to the run location. So here we go. We hold the home key, and it's caught. Left click mixture once, and your engine's spinning. As you heard just before, that was Bohr's engine spinning up just to the right of me, and the engine is now running. You have the engine started. Congratulations. Welcome back. We just had a quick chat, and why Bohr quickly started his engine, and we're now going to taxi. By the way, I was actually incorrect with the mixture control. You're supposed to right click once, sorry, not left click once. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter now. Well, it can start either way. It can start the engine either way. But if you left click once, it puts it into emergency rich. You want to turn it into run. So if you have already done the tutorial and your engine started and everything, and you've left clicked with me, just left click one more time and it will be straight back to run and no problems. But you should right click. That was my bad. Anyways, as you saw, Bohr was just taxiing. So let's increase the engine throttle to about engine power. Increase the throttle to about 10%. Keep it nice and slow. The rubber. Jesus, there's rubble in the hangar. And you want to use the wheel brake and the rudder together to turn your aircraft.
You want to make sure the joystick's held close towards you to stop the tail wheel from being free rotating.
So as you can see it on the control surfaces at the bottom left as you're watching, you can see the rudder's already been trimmed a bit, and you can see what I'm doing with the brake to keep it in line, because as you see this, you have to really fight this aircraft during the taxi. So increase throttle to only about, you don't need any more than 20%, 90% of the time you're on the taxiway. I would say maybe even 10% sometimes. You've got to be really, careful. I just done a really bad taxi there. But that's not an issue. I kept it together. Now we have to turn this corner. And if you're playing the mission that we're playing, which is just a free playing mission that Mako is hosting, you should just turn left once out of those hangars and be straight here. If not, just find the best way to taxi around dual runway that you're on, and you should get onto the air, line up on the runway nicely, or brake fairly hard. Oh, there he is. Just to make sure I don't hit him, but he's taxied nicely to the left hand side. I'm going to go to the right. And we're taxi here together nicely. Okie dokie now. That was the taxi procedure. Really straightforward. As long as you have the left and right wheel brake mapped, as you can see at the bottom I'm showing you now. You have to have those mapped, as I said right at the beginning of this video, because otherwise you are going to have a really hard and tough time. Now before we take off, I will warn you, never go to full throttle on this plane during takeoff. It won't work. You will roll over and die immediately. The maximum throttle you need, and I mean the maximum throttle you need for takeoff, is roughly around 30 to 25%. We've sort of fiddled around with it. 30% was a little bit too much. I would say, honestly, anywhere between 15 and 25% is maximum you need for takeoff. I would say you really don't even need more than that. Once you're in the air, you can go full throttle, and you can, you know, you can climb, and then you can turn down your RPM. But we'll go through that as we go, just to keep this video short and sweet. Okay, Ball, do you want to talk us through your takeoff procedure?
Alright. Bear in mind, I am not the best person to be teaching you this.
Neither am I. Neither am I. That's why I'm handing over straight to you, because we're probably going to crash. So I just handed it over to you.
Right, if you're new to P-51, you're going to want to make sure that in the options for takeoff, you have rudder assistance and takeoff assistance set to maximum, because this is a pain to take off without that, unless you've got, you know, the full setup, rudder pedals, etc. I have stupidly left those off, so this is probably going to end badly. But what you want to do is gently start increasing the throttle. And considering you're sitting inside the cockpit, you've got to make sure that you're keeping roughly straight on the runway. Otherwise you could end up in the grass. And try and get any sort of side slip under control before you take off. And once you've picked up roughly 100 miles an hour, you should be able to gently pull off the runway. Raise your gear, check your flaps, and there you go, airborne. Back to you, GFA.
Really sure. Oh, did you have your flaps lowered for takeoff?
Nope.
Oh, good. Your takeoff seemed a lot nicer than mine, I'll tell you that much. I nearly done the typical thing of underpowering and nearly rolled to the left. And then I had to counter for the overpower. It's fine, we're in the air. So, as I'm going to show you now, it's going to get very loud for a second. So turn down your volume. The gears up. And the plane looks absolutely beautiful. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase the throttle. We're going to hold left control and T, which you're going to see at the bottom of the left of my screen, the trim will start to go back down. There we go. And what we're going to do is just increase the throttle very nicely. We increase the throttle very nicely. Right. Now, what you're going to watch out for though is if you look to the front right, you can see that this dial here, the RPM meter, is very much so reaching the red line. We don't want that at all. So what we need to do is lower the propeller RPM, which is what I showed you earlier, the big P. You're going to lower that down, you'll see the dial start to fall. That's good, because if you can see, the manifold pressure is your throttle and how hard you're pushing the plane basically, and your RPM is the revs per minute of the engine. You don't want that too high, you don't want it to reach the red line whilst you're flying, because you most likely will explode or the engine will break. So lower the RPM quite a bit until you're roughly between the word RPM and full, or whatever that says there. I'm reading currently. And so between those two words, roughly, so I would say about there, it's just a little bit over the halfway. And then if you increase the throttle, you'll see the manifold pressure raises to just below the red bar, as does the RPM. And if you raise the RPM a tiny bit more, or I would say lower it a bit more, you'll keep them both nicely below the red line at full throttle, which is absolutely bang on perfect of what you want to do, due to the fact that if you don't do so, you're going to have a bad day. Put it that way, you're going to really fuck this engine. Welcome back, guys. This is BlueHorizon still. We're going to go and do a landing in the P-51D. Arguably the hardest part about this plane. Takeoff and landing is always the hardest part of flying any plane, but this is a bitch. So what we're going to show you, there's the crash that dive there. So we're actually going to go and land over there. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to reset my trim and actually start dropping the throttle now. Even though we're quite far out, these planes take quite a long time to lose their speed when you're coming in for a landing, because they dive very well. Right guys, so you want to come into this thing, you want to drop your throttle quite a bit. You can see my airspeed is still 400 and I'm flying level at barely any throttle towards the airfield. I don't think I'm even going to be able to land. I'm actually going to have to drop my flaps to lower the speed because I'm coming in ridiculously fast, which is why these aircrafts take so long to lose speed. It is so difficult to truly land in them. So I've dropped my flaps, as you can see. I'm going to have to do another. I'm going to have to come back around again, even though I was pretty much perfectly on the thing. But that's a really good example to show you guys how truly annoying it is to lose speed in these aircraft. You really have to do it at a long distance, a long distance before you reach the runway. So every approach has to be planned. So I would recommend being extremely careful. In fact, I don't even think I'm at Krasnodar.
You're not. That's why.
Yeah. I just realised this isn't fucking Krasnodar. Where the blooming heck have I flown to?
I think this is Krasnodar's secondary airstrip.
They said Krasnodar on the airfield. Well, fuck it. We'll land here. Doesn't make a difference. So, I'm going to go ahead and fly past this. I'm going to climb to try and drop speed, but it's not going to work very well because when I dive again, it's going to just gain it yet again. So, as I said, these planes are difficult to lose speed. I'm going to do 2 sharp turns to try and lose as much velocity as possible so that I can land at a nice 150 miles per hour. So,
it's a bit high.
Well, I think you touch down about 100 is about perfect.
Yeah,
maybe
roughly 90, 100 is good. Any higher, you're risking quite a serious bounce back up and flipping yourself upside down.
Yes, so you want to try and bring this plane in at roughly 160 because otherwise you'll stall, but you want to be able to land at 100, which losing those 60 miles per hour very quickly is very difficult, which is why shaking off speed at any moment is very good, and especially close to the runway. But you've got to remember, these planes are very quick, and they're hard to lose speed. Don't forget to drop your gear. That's something I haven't. That will always help in a situation when you want to land. Dropping gear, I heard, is top. So, I've dropped my gear. I'm going to take my rudder very low. Have you just landed at the same airfield?
I have, but I'm way down the runway. You're good.
He says
Keep
this.
on the right side.
Not exactly experienced in this aircraft. Right, as you see, I'm about 160. Pull up the tail. It's a bit of a blind spot, so it's hard to land the aircraft, as I said. And there you go. Absolutely lovely landing, and if I don't say so myself. Directly centre of the runway. I'm going to go a bit to the right with the rudder and start doing some soft braking, only because I know Bore's somewhere along here and I'm going to end up...
No, I'm clear now.
Okay, good. And start, as you can see on the left hand side of my control surfaces, I'm very edging the brakes, you know, it's feathering them, not going absolutely mental and slamming them on, because you will topple over forward and hit brake drop. And that, my friends, is how to land the P-51D. I really hope this video was helpful to you guys, because we want to try and be as helpful as possible. But that's how you land the P-51D. I'm going to open the canopy so you can hear the roar of the engine. Thanks for watching, guys. Tune in next time when we're doing the Huey and maybe the A10. Stay tuned for more videos, guys. And always, have a nice night. Get out, man! Get out of there! Oh, thanks for watching, guys.